Hi, my friends. Welcome to Healing Together, a YouTube channel dedicated to the God stories that go on around us every day. Today's God story is going to be the story of Thanksgiving. In my family, 50 years ago this year, that year we celebrated Thanksgiving in the Mott Hospital attached to the University of Michigan Hospital, where I was in the burn unit for almost 6 months. I was there actually 5.5 months, and I was in the Mott Hospital 2 weeks. And this is one of the last days that I was there. I want to share with you a story about Thanksgiving. So, welcome to my story, my God story, and how God has worked in my life. At Thanksgiving time in 1972, I was 17 years old. I was approximately 6 foot 1 inches tall, and I weighed someplace between 102 and 105 pounds. Needless to say, that's a little thin. I had pretty well healed up all over as far as the skin the grafts had taken. I had 4 or 5 smaller spots that were still open that would just not heal for me. There was actually 2 spots on my arms and 2 spots on my legs, and then some other just little spots here and there that the skin would just not close up for me. I was only 103, 105 pounds. They would weigh me every day when they would put me on the gurney and then weigh me on the scale that lifted me and put me into the tub for tubbing. I had actually been out of the burn unit once before and over at the Mott Hospital, and they tried tubbing me there. But the nurses there, because of how fragile I was, the nurses had dropped me and actually injured me pretty severely when they dropped me into the tub, and I had to recover from that. It was that was a pretty tough time. They'd take me back to the burn unit for a week, and then I came back to my hospital, which was this time, and I'd been here just for a couple days. I was extremely depressed, and I really struggled against all the therapy. I would go to therapy, but I wouldn't try. I would be in therapy watching the other people, and it actually made it worse because of some of the injuries that they were trying to treat and trying to get the people to live through. And it was just everything was crowding in on me, and I was really struggling a lot to even have the desire to live. It wasn't that I was suicidal, it was just the fact that I did not have the desire uh, to get any better. It was like I just don't mind which one, whether I'm in the hospital or not. It just don't matter. And so I remember at that uh, point in time, that it came to that Thanksgiving week, and Mom told me that she was going to leave for a couple days and go home, and she was going to get some stuff together and then come back, and they would be there for Thanksgiving, and we would celebrate Thanksgiving together in the hospital. She'd only left me one other time in that almost 6 months, and we were 3 days from the 6 months mark. She'd only left me one other time, and that was when Pam and Andrew started school, and she went down and helped to get that going and to get them started and to take care of where they would be staying and so forth. Because really in September, when school started, they had no clue how much longer I was going to be there. Now, historically, and I went back and did some calculations, and mom and dad were just in their 40s. And historically, though, mom had always been a cook of the most extreme kind. We had fantastic meals. Sunday meals were like celebration meals. There was meat, potatoes, and gravy, coleslaw, and all the trimmings. And we had biscuits and everything that you can imagine we had on a regular basis on Sundays. But this year, mom had not had the opportunity to cook except for a few little warm up meals that they could have in their little apartment where they were staying. And I think they actually rented a room. I never did know exactly where it was. But mom had been staying there. Well, she went home, and unbeknownst to me, she prepared a complete Thanksgiving Day meal. So when it came to Thanksgiving morning, even though they were 2.5 hours from the hospital, they loaded up our massive station wagon, one of those good old big station wagons from the 70s, and they loaded it up with all of this food that mom had cooked and brought it to the hospital. And with a cart, they brought it all up to one of the little visiting rooms where visitors would go and kind of hang out. And you know what they are in the hospitals. They would hold 18 or 20 people. They'd have a couple tables, usually in several chairs, and people could kind of get out away from the patient for a few minutes. Or the patient could go down there, which is what we did in this case. Mom had prepared enough food that there was 2 tables covered in food. When I say they were covered in food, I mean they had turkey and ham and mashed potatoes and gravy and coleslaw and fruit salad and biscuits and all of the trimmings, everything that mom could possibly make, she made and brought to the burn unit. She had milk to drink. She had iced tea to drink. She had made everything there was, and the 5 of us, our family, mom and dad, Andrew, who was only 5 years old, I think at the time, maybe 6, and my sister Pam, who was 4 years younger than me, so she would have been 13. We were all there, and we got ready to eat. We sat down at our places. Mom and Dad had all the food laid out. Mom had good dishes, and everything was going to be taken back home. And we sat down, and I remember very, very vividly, we sat down and we held hands, which was fairly new for me to even feel the touch of somebody else. But we sat down and we held hands and we prayed together and thanked God for a very bountiful blessings. The gift of life that He had allowed me to live, and the immense work that Mom had put into bringing that food up there for us to eat at the burn unit. It was a special time, and there was a lot of thanksgiving in the air. I don't want to make it sound like it was a depressing time. It was a very thankful time. Even though we were in the hospital, I was alive. And that was sometimes just a little bit different for Mom and Dad, who had already lost 5 children. And now they were fighting for my life. So when we completed our prayer and we got done praying and we got done saying what we were thankful for, we looked at all this food, and everybody got their plate ready, and Mom got Pam's, and then she got Andrew's. And everybody got situated, and she made me a plate of all of the stuff that she knew I loved. And she put that plate together and she set it in front of me, and I picked up my fork, and it looked so delicious. It smelled wonderful. You could smell it down the hallways. The food just permeated the place. And I want you to get the feeling of what it was. It was just all great. And I picked up my fork and I looked at my plate, and all of my hunger vanished. And I couldn't eat. And as I looked at my plate, and if I remember correctly, I tried to take one bite of mashed potatoes and gravy, and it just churned in my stomach. It had been so long, and I had been sick for so long, and I had been trying to survive for so long that when I sat down to the plate, I could not eat what was set before me. Looking back, I realized that emotionally and physically and mentally, I just was not prepared to eat. You know, while my burns were not anything compared to the years that people spent in the camps during World War II, when I see the emaciated bodies that those people were walking around with, I think many times of how well the Army had to plan out how they fed them, because what we had done is we had brought in this high-calorie, great meal for me to eat, and because I was so sickly, I looked at it and I couldn't eat. When I couldn't eat, nobody else could eat. I don't remember Pam and Andrew, but I do remember Mom and Dad. And they looked at their plate, and they looked at me, and they looked back at their plate. And I think maybe for the first time since that emergency room back in Niles, I think I might have seen a tear in my mother's eye. I think probably for the first time, she probably came real close to breaking down. And as I remember it, I remember she got up and she took my plate and she got a trash barrel and she began to scrape food into that trash barrel. And she emptied out all the plates. She didn't take anything back home. What Pam and Andrew had not eaten, because of course at their age they wouldn't have noticed what was going on, what they had not eaten did not get eaten. And Mom stacked the dishes up and she took them home. I now recognize years later that Mom and Dad were just fearful. If Tim couldn't eat this, what in the world could they do to get me to eat? My dad had made it a mission in his life during that 6 months to bring me whatever I needed so that I could eat. I told you in one of the last videos about the burn unit, I told you about the watermelons and the heart attacks they caused. My dad would bring in chocolate malts. He would bring in banana splits. I love both, and I would eat those. Most of the time I would eat a portion of them, but then that would be all they would do. And they were great for me at that time, not so great for me now, but they were great for me. They did really help, but I was just in such a state that I could not eat. I was in such despair that I could not eat. That Thanksgiving always comes to mind when I sit down and I look at my plate on Thanksgiving, the 49 Thanksgivings I've had since then. It was just a week or two ago when we sat down together with my boys, my daughter-in-law, my granddaughter and her boyfriend, and our grandkids. And I looked at the plate and I got a little bit emotional because I remembered the Thanksgiving that I could not eat. And I thanked Jesus because today, maybe a little bit too well, I can't eat. And my plate was full and I had everything I wanted. And my kids were so wonderful around that table. The Thanksgiving that I had that was compared to that Thanksgiving Day 50 years ago, and how blessed I truly am. My friend, I hope that you are not in a place of despair. If you are, please leave a comment in the comment section below, because I will call you. I will give you my phone number. You can call me and we can sit down and talk about it. There is plenty to be in despair about around us. I'm right now working with 3 different families that have lost loved ones over this Thanksgiving season. As a chaplain, as a friend, as a mentor, I'm working with them. So if you are in that place of despair and you're sitting down, I'm telling you there is a plate of blessings that God has for you. If you cannot partake, let's work through it together. I want you to know that friends make a difference, because in the next video that I am going to record in just a few minutes, I'm going to tell you about friends that came to the burn unit just 2 days later and the difference that they made in my life. But right now, I want you to know that God has the blessings for us that we can partake of. That's my Thanksgiving story from the burn unit. Thank you so much for stopping by. Please hit the subscribe, the like, and the notifications bell. And we will talk to you next time about the value of friends when we're trying to survive. Thank you so much. God bless.